So now we're venturing into a different kind of sphere. Why would we choose a film like the Dybbuk and the Holy Apple film? The film is not in Yiddish. But if you know anything about the history of the Dybbuk, you know that Anski, who wrote the Dybbuk, wrote in Hebrew, wrote in Yiddish. He wasn't quite sure what he was going to do with this final product. In fact, what happened was that this gentleman named Shloime Zeinville Rappaport, who took on the pen name of Anski, of S. Anski, was someone who rebelled against his Jewish background and began doing anthropological studies about Russian soldiers and problems of the Russians. And then history took over. In 1903, there were pogroms, and after the revolution in Russia of 1905, there were more pogroms. And Anski found his own Jewish identity. So as an anthropologist, instead of searching out differences and issues within the Russian world, he began to explore his own Jewishness, and in the course of doing so, began taking trips to different communities to write down and to literally take notes on different traditions and customs. One of the customs was the fact that people claimed, and we'll be talking about that before the film, but people claimed that they saw a Dybbuk. So he sits down and he writes this play, the Dybbuk. He's encouraged by Stanislavski to write it in Russian, which he does. He then translates it into Yiddish, brings it to the Vilna Truppe, and says, "Do I have a play for you?" But in the meantime, the Tsarist censor said, "No way, you're not going to do that play. It's problematic," and they block it. Over the next couple of years, he tries to find other people who will do the play. One of his colleagues, one of his cohorts, is a fellow named Chaim Nachman Bialik, who would later become Israel's poet laureate, takes it and he translates it into Hebrew. And then it is presented to the Habima, the new Hebrew language troupe that is in its infancy at this point. They turn it down. And then finally, it's taken and translated from Bialik's Hebrew back into Yiddish, and it is produced 2 months after Anski passes away. He never had a chance to see the film, the play. What then happened was that over the years it was indeed performed by Habima, by the Vilna Truppe, by a number of different troupes, and eventually in 1937 a Yiddish film was made. My understanding is that that film was just shown a few months ago here in Stockholm. So when we sat and we tried to figure out how do we give you a full picture of the impact of Yiddish culture and literature and cinema on the world, immediately my mind went to the work of this amazingly talented director, Yossi Somer, who is here with us today. So if you've seen Shtisel, how many of you have seen Shtisel? So you know that Shtisel gives us an insight into a world that many of us are not all that knowledgeable about. Well, this gentleman over here, some 25, 30 years ago, was way ahead of his time, and he produced this film, and Yossi and I are going to dialogue. Let me just introduce him, if I may. He is an artist, a social activist, a web influencer, which is a title I must confess I wasn't even sure what it is, but it's IT, technology, where he really influences the discussion that is taking place out there on the cloud. And he's also a peace activist. The film that we're going to see was the recipient of 5 Israeli Academy Awards. Yes, Israel has its own Oscars. Today it's called the Ophir. Back then it was the Israeli Academy Award. This film won five of these awards, and it premiered, which is quite an honor, at the Berlin Film Festival. It was the recipient of the Gold Special Jury Award at the Houston Film Festival, and The Economist picked it as one of its 10 best magic realism pictures, pioneer magic realism pictures. So it's really my honor to welcome Yossi Somer to the...
Tusen takk at jeg får lov å være her med dere. Jeg vil takke veldig mye Lizzie først, og også den hele komiteen. Og tusen takk, og Shabbatov.
You have to teach me that stuff.
No, I said in Norwegian that I thank Lizzie and the committee, and I'd like to thank you for the selection.
So Yossi, tell us why, here was this classic Yiddish story, had been made already as a film. What drew you to this story?
In the late 90s, I sensed that the Jewish society, the Jewish, and I speak about Israel, but at large, is missing some elements in understanding our roots. What I relate to is not necessarily the roots of the Yiddishkeit, although I respect it a lot, but our almost pagan roots, which nobody is talking about, the black side of the religion. And then I took a journey through the writings of Professor Gershom Scholem to decode the Dybbuk story of Anski.
When you say a journey, you mean a personal journey?
My personal journey, which I would dare say, and if it was not an experience that I felt, I would not say it, going into the Pardes and coming out.
So that's a concept, the Pardes, that not everyone understands. Can you just explain that?
And I want to say just, I don't want to go too deep into it, but the Pardes is the Kabbalistic term for the orchard of knowledge.
And historically, some people who ventured into that did not come out.
Yes, there is a clear saying by the Kabbalists that 4 people entered the Pardes and only 1 came alive out. It is dangerous stuff.
May I just interrupt you for a second? Because in the original Dybbuk story, doesn't also Chonen...
Exactly.
Okay. So let's stop there because we don't want to give away the...
No.
Okay.
The saying is very simple. And I want to go deeper a bit in what I attempted to do. And I spoke to some people yesterday a bit about it. We are thinking always, in apropos Yiddishkeit, and you'll see in the film there'll be Yiddishkeit, because it's part of Mea Shearim and the Orthodoxy. But I wanted to challenge it. To challenge it in 2 ways. And I'm trying to simplify. Am I speaking slow enough?
You're doing great.
Clear enough?
Does everyone? Yes.
I got instructions, to speak slow and clear. The first thing is, and I'm coming from a background of East European, family that suffered the Holocaust. Both my parents are alive. My father is 90 and my mother is 89. But Israel and the Jewish society, which I call the Hebrew society because it's based on the Hebrew tribes, and we have to respect the Hebrew language and the Hebrew culture, is not only Yiddish. And I'm challenging you in a Yiddish festival. It has also Sephardic, it has also Mizrahi, which is the majority of the Jewish people today, of the Hebrew people, that I'm the way I describe it, because they suffered less from the Holocaust side, of course. So, the only thing I would say, give away, I've decided to make the Kabbalist a Moroccan wise man, because they are close to the spirits, they are respecting the spirits, and to give him the honor. And I consulted also with some other professors, and I asked them, listen, is the ceremony of the exorcism, does it have, do we have rules? Do we have a book? I said, no. This is abstract. Everyone is doing, every Kabbalist is doing what he feels is correct. I want to add one more thing, and then it will be a question. The second thing is, and it's not from the spiritual side, and I give you a story from behind the scenes also. I've seen about 1,100 actors to choose to this movie. I've chosen some that became stars.
And you want to just tell us their names?
Ayelet Zurer, which this was her first movie.
She's in Shtisel, by the way. She plays the woman the older woman who is attracted in the early scenes, in the early segments.
She went with a VHS cassette to Spielberg and got a part in Munich, and then played with Demon and Angels with Tom Hanks.
And who was the other person?
Yehezkel Lazarov, which is an artist himself. He's a dancer, he's a choreographer, and he's doing very well in Russia, actually, in the TV series. And the thing that I found out after researching, and I got a book which has testimonies throughout centuries. It goes back about 600, 700 centuries ago, with 10 people testifying their names, that they were present in a Dybbuk session.
An actual
Dybbuk session.
Sighting of a Dybbuk.
This is not phenomena which has to do with East Europe. It is happened in Egypt, it happened in Sfat, it happened in North Africa, and the Kabbalah itself was established in France, by the way. But what I want to tell you is this. What is the act of the Kabbalist in the exorcism? I came to some conclusion, but this is personal. There was abuse in the Jewish society. We cannot claim that it was just all beauty. Also sexual abuse. So I suspect that this was a ceremony conducted in a situation of multiple personality, of women, mainly women, who were abused, and the society has created, I know I'm stepping on thin ice, the society has created a ceremony to bring the demons in, bring the bad things in, and create peace and restore peace in the society. There were also men which were in the Dybbuk stage.
So Yossi, let me just, not that I want to pull you, because I think we're going to challenge the audience with the film. Please.
One thing is just, and now I bring you into the method of working with the actors. And then you can see the movie.
Please.
I don't want to go too much.
Yeah.
I've received permission from my brother, he's a professor in psychology, to show Ayelet Zurer only materials which I was asked to come in therapy by a woman that felt that she's going to finish with the multiple personality aspect, and she wanted to re-document it. I was called in, this was years before, and I documented a situation that a woman was switching in my presence into a male and quarreling with herself and other characters. So this is the material, among the method that I used, that I showed Ayelet Zurer personally under strict confidentiality and permission by the woman herself and my brother. So we are entering, so I'm bringing you into the realm of the edge of society. We will start very normal, very cool, with cool music, so I'm happy there are young people here also. And we will enter slowly.
What's the matter? Old people can't like cool music either?
I'm 62, so I'm okay, it's okay. And we will enter a world in Jerusalem which you will not expect. So that's basically.
So we're now going to be entering the world of Mea Sharim and the Haredi world, which to this point had pretty much been neglected in Israeli cinema. And what we, by the way, what we will be seeing tomorrow when we look at Black Honey, for those of you who will be joining us, this wonderful documentary about Avram Tzutzkever, is the tension of Yiddish in Israel. So here we have your choice to do this in Hebrew, because it was an Israeli film, and yet the people really are Yiddish speaking. And the choice that you made was?
The setup is Mea Sharim, complex. I will not go into the details how we did it. The Yiddish is the spirit of it. It's actually the conflict between the protagonist, which is a Sabra, and the Yiddish establishment. So I brought it into today.
Wonderful. All right.
Enjoy
The
the
Dybbuk and the happy and the holy apple field. Thank you, Yossi. Yossi, the Dybbuk and the holy apple field. You just explained the name to everyone. Just
the Dybbuk comes from the source name Dybbuk, which is glue, a spirit which glues into you. The holy apple field is a Kabbalistic term in time. It's Friday, as dusk falls. This is the moment the Kabbalists used to go out to get the Shekhinah, this high spirit. And the holy apple field is just an abstract term of that moment of entering the realm of the Shekhinah.
thank you so much, Yossi.